The day began like any other, ordinary and unremarkable. The sun was just beginning its climb into a pale blue sky, and the streets buzzed with the usual morning rush, people hurrying to work, children off to school, and the occasional coffee shop bustling with activity. You were one of those faces in the crowd, blending into the rhythm of the city, your thoughts focused on the tasks awaiting you at the office. Little did you know, this would be a day that would change your life forever. As you walked down the familiar street, a man you had never seen before suddenly stepped into your path. He was tall, with a presence that commanded attention despite his ordinary appearance. His clothes were simple, jeans and a dark jacket, yet something about him seemed out of place, as if he didn't quite belong in the hustle and bustle of the morning crowd. He locked eyes with you, and for a brief moment you felt a strange jolt of recognition, though you were certain you had never met him before. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice calm and steady. "I've been looking for you." You stopped in your tracks, confused. "Looking for me? I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" He smiled, a cryptic sort of smile that seemed to hold secrets. Without another word, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He held it out to you, and as you took it from his hand, you felt the weight of something thick and heavy inside. "What is this?" you asked, your curiosity piqued. "Open it," he replied, his eyes never leaving yours. With a mix of hesitation and intrigue, you carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a check, one that made your heart skip a beat. It was a check for $1 million, made out in your name, with today's date and a signature you didn't recognize. Your mind raced. $1 million. This had to be a mistake. You looked up at the man, who was watching you with that same enigmatic smile. This can't be real," you stammered, holding the check as if it might disappear at any moment. "It's very real," the man said, his tone reassuring. "It's yours. No strings attached." Your thoughts spun in circles, searching for an explanation that made sense. But why? Why me? The man's smile widened just a fraction. "Because it's time for you to step into a new chapter of your life. Take this as a sign, an opportunity to see the world differently, to see yourself differently." Before you could ask another question, he turned and began to walk away, merging seamlessly into the crowd. You stood there, rooted to the spot, the check still clutched in your hand. Everything around you seemed to blur, the noise of the city fading into the background as you stared at the piece of paper that could change everything. You wanted to chase after him, to demand answers, but your legs refused to move. The surrealness of the situation had you paralyzed with disbelief. $1 million, just like that. It didn't make any sense, and yet here it was, tangible proof in your hand that something extraordinary had just happened. After what felt like an eternity, you finally managed to pull yourself together. The reality of what you were holding slowly began to sink in. You glanced around, half expecting someone to tell you this was all a joke, but no one paid you any attention. The world carried on as usual, oblivious to the life-altering event that had just taken place. The first thing that came to your mind was the bank. You had to verify the check, make sure it was real. With your heart still pounding in your chest, you quickly changed course and headed towards the nearest branch. Each step felt surreal, as if you were moving through a dream, and yet everything around you was vividly real. When you finally reached the bank, you were still in a daze. The cool, air-conditioned space provided a stark contrast to the warmth of the morning outside. You approached the counter, and the teller, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, greeted you with a polite smile. "How can I help you today?" she asked. You swallowed hard and handed her the check. "I need to deposit this," you said, your voice betraying the nervous excitement you felt. The teller took the check and her eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she scanned the amount. She looked back at you, her professional demeanor slipping just a little. "I'll need to speak to my manager," she said, before disappearing into the back room. A few minutes later, she returned with a man who introduced himself as the branch manager. He was a tall, stern-looking figure who examined the check with a practiced eye. After a moment, he looked up at you, his expression softening slightly. "We can process this for you, but due to the high amount, it will take 10 days for the funds to clear and be available in your account," he explained. 10 days? You echoed, the reality of the situation still settling in. "Yes," he confirmed. "It's standard procedure for large transactions like this, but rest assured, once it's cleared, the money will be yours to use as you wish." You nodded, still trying to wrap your head around it all. "Okay, thank you." The manager offered a small smile and handed the check back to the teller, who began the process of depositing it. You watched as the check was stamped and recorded, each step feeling like a marker in this strange new journey you had just embarked upon. Finally, with the transaction completed, the teller handed you a receipt. "Is there anything else I can assist you with today?" You shook your head, still in a daze. "No, that's all. Thank you." As you walked out of the bank, the reality of what had just happened began to settle in. You had just deposited a check for $1 million, a check that, in 10 days, would clear and be available for you to use. The thought alone was enough to make your head spin. But as the initial shock began to wear off, a new feeling started to take its place, a sense of exhilaration, of possibility. You could hardly believe it, but something inside you knew that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. And as you walked back onto the bustling street, the world seemed different somehow, as if the colors were a little brighter, the air a little lighter. For the rest of the day, you moved through the world in a haze of excitement and disbelief. The check, the mysterious man, the promise of $1 million, it all felt too good to be true, and yet it was real. You could feel it in your bones, in the way your heart raced every time you thought about what you would do with the money. As the hours passed, you began to entertain ideas that had once seemed impossible. A new home, perhaps, a place you could truly call your own. Or maybe you could finally start that business you'd always dreamed of, the one you never thought you'd have the funds to launch. The possibilities were endless, and the mere thought of them filled you with a sense of freedom you had never experienced before. That night, as you lay in bed, sleep eluded you. Your mind was too busy, racing with thoughts of the future. But it wasn't just the money that kept you awake. It was the way it made you feel, invincible, as if the world had suddenly opened up to you in a way it never had before. You realized that even though the money wasn't in your hands yet, just knowing it was there had changed something fundamental inside you. You felt more confident, more powerful, as if you could do anything, be anything. The world was no longer a place of limitations, but a canvas upon which you could paint your dreams. Over the next few days, this newfound energy began to permeate every aspect of your life. You noticed it in the way you carried yourself, in the way people responded to you. At work, colleagues who had previously been indifferent to you now seemed drawn to your presence. They smiled more, asked for your input, and even complimented you on things they had never noticed before. It was as if the $1 million check had unlocked a hidden potential within you, a magnetism that attracted people and opportunities alike. You found yourself being invited to meetings and events you would never have been considered for before. An old friend, whom you hadn't spoken to in years, reached out to reconnect, proposing a business venture that piqued your interest. The changes weren't just external either. Internally, you felt a shift, a sense of clarity and purpose that had been absent before. You began to think more deeply about what you wanted out of life, what your true passions were. The $1 million, you realized, was not just a windfall. It was a catalyst, a force that had set you on a new path. But with this newfound power came a series of questions. What did this money truly mean? Why had it come to you, and what were you meant to do with it? The mysterious man's words echoed in your mind. It's time for you to step into a new chapter of your life. But what did that chapter look like? You started to reflect on your past, on the life you had lived up until that fateful encounter. There had been good times and bad, successes and failures, but through it all, there had always been a sense of something missing, something you could never quite put your finger on. Perhaps it was a lack of purpose, or maybe it was the feeling that life was passing you by without you truly living it. Now, with this unexpected windfall, you felt a new sense of responsibility. This money wasn't just a gift. It was an opportunity, a challenge to see the world differently, to see yourself differently. And the more you thought about it, the more you realized that this was about more than just financial security. It was about transformation, about becoming the person you had always wanted to be. As the days passed and the countdown to the check's clearance continued, you found yourself growing more introspective. The initial excitement had given way to a deeper contemplation, a questioning of your beliefs and desires. What did you truly want out of life? What would you do with this newfound wealth? And perhaps most importantly, who did you want to become? The more you pondered these questions, the more you realized that the answers lay not in the money itself, but in the energy it represented. The man who had given you the check hadn't just handed you $1 million. He had handed you a key to unlock the potential within you, to access a part of yourself that had been dormant for too long. You started to notice how your thoughts and feelings about money had shaped your life up until this point. There had always been a sense of scarcity, a fear that there was never enough to go around. You had worried about bills, about saving for the future, about making ends meet. But now, with this check in your account, those fears seemed almost trivial, as if they belonged to another person, another life. You realized that the true gift wasn't the money itself, but the freedom it had given you, the freedom to see the world through the lens of abundance, to believe that anything was possible. This shift in perspective was profound, and it began to influence every aspect of your life. You started to take more risks, to put yourself out there in ways you never had before. You applied for jobs you would have never considered, reached out to people you admired, and began to explore new hobbies and interests. With each step, you felt a growing sense of confidence, a belief that you were capable of more than you had ever imagined. And as you embraced this new mindset, the opportunities began to flow in. It was as if the universe had been waiting for you to wake up, to realize your potential. Doors that had once seemed closed were now opening, and you walked through them with a sense of purpose and determination. But even as you reveled in this newfound abundance, you knew that the journey was just beginning. The man's words echoed in your mind. It's time for you to step into a new chapter of your life. You didn't know what that chapter would hold, but you were ready to find out. The $1 million check had set something in motion, something that couldn't be stopped. And as the 10 days drew closer, you felt a growing excitement, a sense that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. The money was a tool, a means to an end, but the true wealth lay within you, in the potential that had been unlocked by this unexpected encounter. You didn't have all the answers yet, but you knew one thing for certain. You were no longer the person you had been before. The world had changed, and so had you. The $1 million might have been the catalyst, but the transformation was all your own. And as you prepared to step into this new chapter, you felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the money, but for the journey that lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of promise. And with that thought, you knew that you were ready for whatever came next. The $1,000,000 check was just the beginning. The real adventure was about to begin. Chapter 2. The transformation begins. The days following your unexpected encounter with the mysterious man were filled with a sense of surreal anticipation. The $1,000,000 check, safely deposited in your bank account, hovered in the back of your mind like a dream you could almost grasp, yet still felt distant. The bank had confirmed that it would take 10 days for the funds to clear, and in those 10 days, something extraordinary began to happen. At first, the change was subtle, almost imperceptible. You went about your daily routine, work, errands, the usual social interactions, but there was a new energy within you, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. It was as if the mere knowledge that you were about to become a millionaire had unlocked a part of you that had been lying dormant, waiting for this exact moment to awaken. You started to notice small shifts in how people responded to you. At work, colleagues who had previously been indifferent now seemed drawn to you, as if they could sense something different in your demeanor. There was a newfound respect in their eyes, a curiosity about the changes they couldn't quite put their finger on. They smiled more, engaged you in conversations that went beyond the usual small talk, and even sought your opinion on matters that had previously been outside your purview. One day, your boss, a stern and often distant figure, stopped by your desk. He was known for his reserved nature, rarely engaging in casual conversation with his employees. But today, he lingered, studying you with an intensity that made you slightly uneasy. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. You blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Yes, everything's fine. Why do you ask?" He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "You just seem different lately, more confident. I've noticed how people are gravitating toward you. It's a good thing." You felt a flush of warmth at his words. "Thank you. I guess I've just been feeling more positive lately." He nodded, still studying you as if trying to decipher a puzzle. "Keep it up. It's not often we see someone rise like this." With that, he walked away, leaving you with a sense of pride and a growing realization that something significant was happening. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the way you were carrying yourself, the energy you were projecting into the world. For the first time in a long time, you felt truly empowered, as if you were finally stepping into the person you were always meant to be. This newfound confidence began to seep into every aspect of your life. You noticed it in the way you spoke to people, your tone more assured, your words more deliberate. You no longer second-guessed yourself in conversations, no longer felt the need to apologize for taking up space. Instead, you stood tall, shoulders back, voice steady, and it was as if the world responded in kind. Even your physical appearance seemed to change. You caught glimpses of yourself in mirrors and noticed a certain radiance that hadn't been there before. Your skin glowed with vitality, your eyes sparkled with a new sense of purpose. It was as if the inner transformation was manifesting itself outwardly, a reflection of the positive energy you were now cultivating. One morning, you found yourself taking extra care in your appearance. You chose your clothes with a little more thought, paying attention to how they made you feel rather than just how they looked. You added a touch of perfume, something subtle yet sophisticated, and when you looked in the mirror, you saw someone who exuded confidence and poise. It wasn't vanity, it was self-respect, an acknowledgement that you deserved to look and feel your best. As you walked out the door that morning, you noticed that even your gait had changed. There was a lightness in your step, a spring that hadn't been there before. You moved with purpose, as if each step was taking you closer to the life you were destined to live. The world around you seemed to respond to this energy, as if the very air was charged with possibility. On the way to work, you stopped by your usual coffee shop. The barista, a friendly young woman you'd exchanged pleasantries with for months, greeted you with a wide smile. "Good morning. You're looking especially radiant today," she said as she handed you your coffee. You smiled back, genuinely touched by the compliment. "Thank you. I'm just feeling really good today." "Well, it shows. Have a great day." As you left the coffee shop, you couldn't help but marvel at how something as simple as feeling good could have such a profound effect on the way people treated you. It was as if the universe was mirroring your internal state, reflecting back the positivity and confidence you were now projecting. The changes weren't limited to your work and social interactions. Even your surroundings seemed to transform in subtle ways. Your home, which had always felt comfortable but a little lackluster, now seemed to glow with warmth and vibrancy. You found yourself taking better care of your space, tidying up with a newfound appreciation for the things you owned. You rearranged furniture, added a few decorative touches, and before long, your home felt like a true sanctuary, a place that reflected the person you were becoming. It wasn't long before you started attracting opportunities that had previously seemed out of reach. One day, as you were checking your email, you noticed a message from an old friend you hadn't spoken to in years. The subject line read, "Exciting opportunity, let's catch up." Intrigued, you opened the email and read the message. Your friend, who had moved to another city and started a successful business, was reaching out to reconnect. He mentioned that he had been following your social media posts and noticed the positive changes in your life. He was in town for a few days and wanted to meet up to discuss a potential business venture that he thought you'd be perfect for. Your heart raced as you read the email. This was someone you had always admired, someone who had achieved the kind of success you had once only dreamed of. The idea that he saw potential in you, that he wanted to collaborate on something significant, filled you with a sense of pride and excitement. You quickly replied, agreeing to meet him for coffee the next day. As you hit send, you couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for the mysterious man who had handed you the check. It was clear now that the money wasn't just a financial windfall. It was a catalyst for transformation, opening doors you hadn't even known existed. The next morning, you woke up with a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. You dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made you feel both confident and professional. As you looked in the mirror, you reminded yourself that this was just the beginning. The check was still processing, but the changes it had triggered were already in motion. When you arrived at the coffee shop, your friend was already there, sitting at a table near the window. He stood up as you approached, his face breaking into a warm smile. "It's so good to see you," he said, giving you a friendly hug. "You look amazing. Life must be treating you well." You smiled, feeling a rush of happiness at his words. "It's been a good few weeks," you admitted. "I've had some unexpected things come my way." He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "I'd love to hear all about it, but first, let me tell you why I wanted to meet." You both sat down, and he began to tell you about the project he was working on. It was an innovative startup that combined technology and wellness, a field that had always interested you. As he described the vision and the team he was assembling, you felt a spark of excitement. This was exactly the kind of opportunity you had been longing for, something that aligned with your passions and offered the potential for significant growth. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," he said as he finished his pitch. "Your skills and energy would be a perfect fit for this project. I know it's a lot to consider, but I really think you could make a huge impact here." You were stunned, not just by the offer, but by how natural it felt. A few weeks ago, you might have doubted your ability to take on such a challenge. But now, with the confidence that had been growing inside you, you felt ready, ready to step into a new role, ready to take on new responsibilities, and ready to seize this opportunity with both hands. "I'm honored that you thought of me," you said, your voice steady. "This sounds like an incredible opportunity, and I'd love to be a part of it." Your friend's face lit up with enthusiasm. "That's fantastic. I knew you'd be perfect for this. We'll get started right away. There's so much to do, and I'm thrilled to have you on board." As the conversation continued, you felt a deep sense of alignment, as if everything was falling into place exactly as it was meant to. This was more than just a career opportunity. It was a chance to reinvent yourself, to step fully into the person you were becoming. After your meeting, you walked out of the coffee shop feeling elated. The world around you seemed to buzz with possibility, and you knew that this was just the beginning. The $1 million had sparked a transformation that was now taking on a life of its own, propelling you toward a future that was brighter than anything you had imagined. Over the next few days, the changes continued to unfold. The newfound confidence you had cultivated began to manifest in ways that surprised even you. At work, you were more assertive, more willing to speak up and share your ideas. You found yourself taking on leadership roles, guiding projects with a level of poise and authority that hadn't been there before. People noticed. Your colleagues started to seek you out for advice. Your boss entrusted you with more responsibilities, and you began to see yourself not just as a team member, but as a leader. The shift was subtle but profound, and it filled you with a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. Outside of work, the changes were just as significant. You found yourself saying yes to things you would have once avoided: networking events, social gatherings, even spontaneous weekend trips. The old you had been cautious, hesitant to step out of your comfort zone, but the new you was ready to embrace life with open arms. One evening, as you were getting ready for bed, you received a text from an acquaintance you hadn't seen in months. She was hosting a small dinner party the next weekend and wanted to invite you. In the past, you might have declined the invitation, preferring the comfort of a quiet evening at home. But now, you felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of meeting new people and expanding your social circle. You replied with an enthusiastic yes, and as you set your phone down, you realized that this was yet another sign of how much you had changed. You were no longer content to play it safe, to live within the confines of what was comfortable and familiar. The check had given you the push you needed to start living boldly, to take risks and embrace the unknown. As the 10 days drew closer, the anticipation built. You found yourself daydreaming about the possibilities that the money would bring, the places you would travel, the investments you would make, the causes you would support. But more than anything, you were excited about the person you were becoming. The $1 million was simply a catalyst, a tool to help you unlock the potential that had always been inside you. One afternoon, as you were walking home from work, you took a moment to pause and reflect on the journey so far. You had changed, that much was clear. But the change wasn't just about the money. It was about the shift in mindset, the decision to see yourself as someone deserving of abundance and success. You thought back to the mysterious man who had handed you the check, the way he had looked at you with that knowing smile. He had seen something in you, something you were only now beginning to see in yourself. And as you stood there on the sidewalk, watching the world go by, you realized that the greatest gift he had given you wasn't the money, but the belief in your own potential. The 10 days were almost over, and you knew that once the money cleared, your life would change even more. But for now, you were content to bask in the glow of the transformation that had already begun. The $1 million were waiting for you, but the real wealth was already in your hands. The confidence, the clarity, the courage to step into a new chapter of your life. And as you continued your walk home, you couldn't help but smile at the thought of what lay ahead. The future was bright, and you were ready to embrace it with open arms. The transformation had begun, and there was no turning back. Chapter 3. The Power of Perception. Continued. The day the money cleared was a turning point, but not in the way you had initially expected. The $1 million were now at your disposal, yet the sense of peace and fulfillment you felt didn't come from the number in your bank account. Instead, it came from the profound realization that the real transformation had already taken place within you. The money was simply a symbol of the shift in your consciousness, a shift from scarcity to abundance, from fear to trust, and from self-doubt to empowered action. That evening, as you sat in your living room, you found yourself reflecting on the journey that had brought you to this point. The more you thought about it, the more you realized that the money itself was just a small part of the story. The true power lay in the change that had occurred in your perception, a change that had opened your eyes to the limitless possibilities that life had to offer. You recalled a time not so long ago when your life had felt constrained by limitations, both real and imagined. You had believed that there was never enough time, enough money, enough opportunities. You had been stuck in a cycle of scarcity thinking, always worried about what you didn't have, always fearful of what might go wrong. But now, as you looked back, you saw those fears for what they truly were. Illusions created by a mind that had been conditioned to believe in lack. The money hadn't created the abundance in your life, it had simply revealed it. It had shown you that abundance was always there, waiting for you to recognize it, waiting for you to claim it as your own. And as you embraced this new mindset, you found that the world responded in kind. Opportunities that had once seemed out of reach now appeared effortlessly. Relationships that had been stagnant or strained were now flourishing. Even your health, which you had taken for granted, seemed to improve as you let go of the stress and anxiety that had weighed you down for so long. The more you reflected, the more you realized that abundance wasn't just about material wealth. It was a state of being, a way of seeing the world that allowed you to appreciate the richness of life in all its forms. It was about recognizing the beauty in the everyday moments, the connections with others, the joy of pursuing your passions, and the satisfaction of knowing that you were on the right path. But even as you reveled in this newfound understanding, you knew that the journey was far from over. The $1 million in your account represented a tremendous opportunity, but also a significant responsibility. How would you use this wealth in a way that was aligned with your values? How would you ensure that it contributed to the greater good, rather than simply serving your own desires? These questions weighed heavily on your mind, and you realized that you needed to approach this new chapter of your life with intention and clarity. The old you might have been content to spend the money on luxuries, to indulge in the material pleasures that society so often equated with success. But the new you understood that true wealth went far beyond the superficial. It was about creating a life of purpose, a life that was rich in meaning and fulfillment. With this in mind, you decided to take a few days to step back and reassess your priorities. You wanted to make sure that the decisions you made were coming from a place of alignment, rather than from the fleeting excitement of newfound wealth. So, you cleared your schedule, turned off your phone, and retreated to a quiet place where you could reflect and meditate on the path ahead. During this time, you revisited the practices that had helped you shift your perception in the first place: meditation, visualization, and journaling. Each morning, you sat in stillness, focusing on your breath and allowing your mind to settle. You visualized the life you wanted to create, not just in terms of financial success, but in terms of the impact you wanted to have on the world. You imagined yourself using your wealth to support causes you cared about, to help others achieve their dreams, and to contribute to the well-being of your community. As you journaled, you wrote down your intentions, your hopes, and your fears. You acknowledged the doubts that still lingered, the old beliefs that occasionally resurfaced, and the uncertainty of stepping into a new role as a steward of wealth. But you also wrote about the excitement you felt, the sense of purpose that was growing stronger with each passing day. You wrote about the vision that was beginning to take shape, a vision of a life that was abundant in every sense of the word. By the end of the week, you felt a deep sense of clarity. You knew that the money was a tool, and like any tool, it could be used for good or ill. It was up to you to decide how to wield it, to use it in a way that was aligned with your highest self. And with this clarity came a renewed sense of confidence. You were ready to take the next step, to begin using your wealth in a way that reflected your values and your vision for the future. The first thing you did was create a plan for how you would use the money. You allocated a portion for practical needs, paying off debts, investing for the future, and ensuring that you had a solid financial foundation. But the majority of the funds were earmarked for something much more meaningful: your new mission to create positive change in the world. You decided to start small, focusing on causes and projects that were close to your heart. You made donations to organizations that were doing important work in areas you cared about: environmental conservation, education, social justice. You reached out to local community groups, offering your support and asking how you could get involved. And you began to explore the possibility of starting your own initiative, something that would allow you to make a direct and lasting impact. As you took these steps, you noticed that the energy of abundance continued to flow into your life. The more you gave, the more you received, not just in terms of financial returns, but in terms of the joy and fulfillment that came from knowing you were making a difference. Opportunities continued to present themselves, connections were strengthened, and you found that your life was becoming richer in ways that went far beyond money. But perhaps the most profound change was the way you felt about yourself. The old doubts and insecurities that had once held you back were gradually being replaced by a deep sense of self-worth. You no longer felt the need to prove yourself, to seek validation from others, or to compare your success to anyone else's. You knew that you were on the right path, and that was enough. One day, as you were sitting on your porch, watching the sunset, you reflected on how far you had come. The journey had not been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but you felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experiences that had brought you to this point. You realized that the power of perception was one of the greatest gifts you had ever received, the ability to see the world and yourself through the lens of abundance. You understood now that true wealth was not about the number in your bank account, but about the richness of your life, the relationships you cultivated, the impact you made, the joy you found in everyday moments. And as you sat there, basking in the golden light of the setting sun, you felt a profound sense of peace. The $1 million had been a catalyst, but the real transformation had taken place within you. You had learned to see the world in a new way, to recognize the abundance that was all around you, and to claim it as your own. And with that realization came a deep sense of empowerment, the knowledge that you had the power to shape your reality, to create the life you wanted, and to make a difference in the world. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, you knew that this was just the beginning. The journey ahead was filled with possibilities, and you were ready to embrace them with an open heart and an abundant mindset. The power of perception had unlocked a new world for you, and you were ready to step into it fully, to live the life you were meant to live. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, you made a silent promise to yourself, to continue walking this path of abundance, to stay true to your values, and to use your wealth and your power of perception to create a life of purpose, joy, and fulfillment. The future was bright, and you were ready to shine. Chapter 4. The Spiritual Connection. The days that followed were filled with a deep sense of introspection. Now that the money was securely in your account, the excitement of financial security had settled into something more profound, a need to understand the significance of this gift. It was no longer just about what you could do with the money, it was about what the money meant. You began to ponder its role in your life, and slowly you started to explore the spiritual dimension of your newfound wealth. Money had always been a practical matter to you, a means to an end, a necessity for survival. It was something to be earned, saved, and carefully managed. But now, with this sudden influx of wealth, you found yourself questioning those old beliefs. What if money was more than just a material resource? What if it was a form of energy, a spiritual tool that could amplify your intentions and shape your reality? The idea intrigued you, and the more you thought about it, the more it made sense. Over the past weeks, you had seen firsthand how your perception of abundance had transformed your life. Opportunities had appeared, relationships had deepened, and you had stepped into a version of yourself that was more confident, more empowered, and more aligned with your true desires. And yet, you hadn't even touched the money until just recently. The shift had occurred on a much deeper level, a shift in energy, in consciousness. One evening, you found yourself drawn to a book that had been sitting on your shelf for years, unread. It was a book on the law of attraction, a concept you had heard of but never really delved into. As you flipped through the pages, a particular passage caught your eye. Money is a form of energy. It is a reflection of our beliefs, thoughts, and emotions about abundance. When we align our energy with the frequency of abundance, money flows into our lives as a natural consequence. It is not the money itself that brings happiness, but the energy and intentions behind it. You read the passage again, letting the words sink in. Money as energy. It was a concept that resonated deeply with you. It explained why you had felt such a profound shift in your life, even before you had access to the funds. The money had been there, yes, but it was your alignment with the energy of abundance that had made all the difference. This realization sparked a journey of spiritual exploration. You began to delve into teachings about the nature of wealth, prosperity, and the law of attraction. You learned that money, like everything else in the universe, was made up of energy, and that this energy could be directed and shaped by your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. One concept that particularly intrigued you was the idea that money could be a reflection of your inner state. If you believed in scarcity, if you feared that there was never enough, then that belief would manifest in your financial reality. But if you believed in abundance, if you trusted that the universe would always provide, then money would flow to you naturally and effortlessly. This idea challenged everything you had been taught about money. Growing up, you had absorbed the belief that money was hard to come by, that it required struggle and sacrifice. You had been taught to be frugal, to save for a rainy day, and to always be cautious with your spending. But now, you were beginning to see that these beliefs might have been holding you back, creating a reality of scarcity and limitation. You decided to experiment with this new understanding. Each morning, you set aside time to meditate on abundance. You focused on the feeling of wealth, of having more than enough to meet your needs and desires. You visualized the money in your account growing, multiplying, and being used in ways that brought joy and fulfillment to your life and the lives of others. As you practiced these meditations, you noticed something remarkable. Your relationship with money began to change. You no longer felt anxious about spending, no longer worried about the future. Instead, you felt a deep sense of trust. Trust in yourself, in your ability to create wealth, and in the universe's ability to provide for you. One day, during your meditation, a thought came to you that made your heart race with excitement. What if this money was meant for something greater? What if it was a tool, not just for your personal fulfillment, but for something that could benefit others, something that could create a ripple effect of positivity in the world? The idea took root in your mind, and you began to explore it further. You thought about the causes you cared about, the environment, education, social justice, and how you could use your wealth to make a difference. You imagined starting a foundation, funding projects that aligned with your values, or even creating a business that combined profitability with a positive social impact. As these ideas flowed, you felt a surge of energy, a deep sense of purpose that went beyond personal gain. The money was no longer just about what it could do for you. It was about what you could do with it, how you could use it to bring more light, more love, more abundance into the world. This realization was empowering. You had always wanted to make a difference, to contribute something meaningful to the world, but you had never known how. Now, with this money as a tool, the possibilities seemed endless. You began to see yourself as a steward of this wealth, someone who had been entrusted with a great responsibility, a responsibility to use it wisely, to create something that would outlast you, something that would leave a legacy. But with this sense of purpose came new questions. How could you ensure that your actions were aligned with your highest intentions? How could you use this money in a way that honored the spiritual connection you had discovered? You realized that it was not enough to have wealth. You needed to cultivate wisdom and discernment, to make decisions that were guided by your values and your connection to something greater than yourself. To help navigate these questions, you began to study the lives of those who had successfully integrated wealth with spirituality. You read about philanthropists who had used their fortunes to create positive change, about business leaders who had built companies that prioritized people and the planet alongside profit. Their stories inspired you, showing you that it was possible to be both wealthy and spiritually fulfilled, to use money as a force for good. One story that particularly resonated with you was that of a woman who had built a multi-million-dollar business focused on sustainability. She had started with a simple idea, creating eco-friendly products, and had grown her company into a global brand that was known not just for its products, but for its commitment to the environment and to social responsibility. Her success was a testament to the power of combining business acumen with a deep sense of purpose. As you read about her journey, you began to see parallels with your own. Like her, you had been given an opportunity to create something meaningful, to use your resources in a way that reflected your values. And like her, you knew that this path would require courage, vision, and a willingness to step outside of your comfort zone. You began to map out a plan, starting with small steps. You reached out to organizations that were doing work you admired, offering donations and asking how you could get involved. You started conversations with like-minded individuals, exploring ideas for projects and collaborations. And as you did, you felt the energy of abundance continuing to flow, bringing new opportunities and connections into your life. One day, while meditating, you had a vision, an image of a community, a place where people came together to learn, to grow, and to support one another. It was a place of healing, of creativity, of spiritual connection. You saw gardens where food was grown sustainably, classrooms where knowledge was shared freely, and spaces where art and music flourished. It was a place where the energy of abundance flowed freely, touching everyone who entered. The vision was powerful, and it stayed with you long after the meditation ended. You began to wonder if this was the purpose for which the money had come to you, if this was the project that would allow you to use your wealth in a way that was aligned with your deepest values. The more you thought about it, the more it felt right, as if everything in your life had been leading up to this moment. But you also knew that this vision would require careful planning and collaboration. It was not something you could do alone. You would need to bring together people with different skills and perspectives, people who shared your vision and were committed to making it a reality. You started by reaching out to a few close friends, people you trusted and who had experience in areas that would be crucial to the project: architecture, education, community development. You shared your vision with them, and to your delight, they were excited by the idea. They offered their support, their expertise, and most importantly, their belief in the vision you had shared. With their encouragement, you began to take concrete steps toward making the vision a reality. You researched potential locations, looking for a place where the community could be built. You explored funding options, considering how to best use the money in your account to get the project off the ground. And you started to connect with other organizations and individuals who might be interested in partnering with you. As the project began to take shape, you felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what you had been searching for, a way to use your wealth in service of something greater, something that would make a lasting impact. And as you moved forward, you continued to draw on the spiritual connection you had discovered, using meditation, visualization, and other practices to stay aligned with your intentions. One day, as you were walking through the site you had chosen for the community, you felt a deep sense of peace. The land was beautiful, a mix of open fields and wooded areas, with a river running through it. It was the perfect place to bring your vision to life, to create a space where people could come together and connect with themselves, with each other, and with the natural world. You stood there for a long time, taking it all in: the sound of the river, the smell of the trees, the feel of the earth beneath your feet. And as you did, you felt a profound sense of gratitude for the money that had made this possible, for the people who were supporting you, and for the journey that had brought you to this moment. In that moment, you knew that this was your path, your purpose. The money had been a gift, yes, but it was also a tool that you had been entrusted with to create something beautiful, something lasting. And as you stood there, you made a silent promise: to use this money wisely, to honor the spiritual connection you had discovered, and to create something that would bring more love, more light, and more abundance into the world. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and difficult decisions. But you felt ready to step into the role you had been called to play, ready to use your wealth in service of a greater good. The money was no longer just a financial resource. It was a spiritual tool, a reflection of your deepest values and intentions. And as you walked away from the site, you felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that you were exactly where you were meant to be. The spiritual connection you had discovered had brought you here, to this place, to this moment. And as you moved forward, you would continue to honor that connection, to use your wealth in a way that was aligned with your highest self. The money was just the beginning. The real journey was just beginning. Chapter 5. Overcoming Limiting Beliefs. The days of reflection and newfound clarity had given you a strong sense of purpose, but with it also came an awareness of the challenges that lay ahead. As you began to actively engage with your wealth, making donations, investing in projects, and exploring new ventures, you encountered something unexpected: the old familiar voices of doubt and fear creeping back into your mind. Despite all the growth and transformation you had experienced, there were still parts of you that clung to limiting beliefs that threatened to undermine your newfound sense of abundance. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A fleeting thought here, a moment of hesitation there. As you sat down to write a large donation check to a charity close to your heart, you felt a twinge of anxiety. Was this too much? Would you regret giving away so much of your wealth? The thought of draining your resources, even for a good cause, triggered a familiar feeling of scarcity, the old fear that there might not be enough left for you. These feelings surprised you. After all, you had worked so hard to cultivate a mindset of abundance, to let go of the fears that had once held you back. And yet, here they were, resurfacing at a time when you thought you had moved past them. It was a humbling reminder that the journey of personal growth was not linear, that even as you progressed, there were still layers of conditioning to be unraveled. Determined not to let these limiting beliefs hold you back, you decided to confront them head-on. You knew that ignoring these feelings would only allow them to fester and grow, potentially derailing the progress you had made. Instead, you chose to face them with the same openness and honesty that had guided you through your initial transformation. The first step was to identify the beliefs that were at the root of your anxiety. You began by journaling, writing down every fear, doubt, and concern that surfaced when you thought about your wealth. As you poured your thoughts onto the page, patterns began to emerge, patterns that pointed to deeply ingrained beliefs about money, worthiness, and scarcity. One belief that stood out was the idea that money was inherently fleeting, that it could disappear as quickly as it had arrived. This belief had been shaped by your upbringing, by the messages you had received from society, and by your own past experiences. Growing up, you had often heard phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," and "You have to work hard for every penny." These messages had created a subconscious narrative that money was something to be guarded, something that could slip through your fingers if you weren't careful. Another belief you uncovered was the notion that you didn't truly deserve the wealth you had received. This belief was tied to feelings of unworthiness, a sense that you hadn't earned your success in the traditional way. The mysterious nature of the million-dollar check had only exacerbated these feelings, making you question whether you were somehow an imposter, living a life that wasn't truly yours. As you examined these beliefs, you realized that they were not based on truth, but on fear. They were the product of a mind that had been conditioned to see the world through the lens of scarcity, a mind that had been taught to believe that abundance was something rare and hard to come by. But now, with the awareness you had gained, you knew that these beliefs no longer served you. It was time to let them go. The next step was to actively reframe these limiting beliefs, to replace them with new, empowering narratives that aligned with your current reality. You began by challenging the idea that money was fleeting. You reminded yourself that the money had come to you for a reason, that it was a reflection of the abundance you had attracted into your life. You affirmed that money was not something to be feared or hoarded, but a tool to be used wisely and generously. You also confronted the belief that you didn't deserve your wealth. You reminded yourself that worthiness was not something that had to be earned or proven. It was an inherent part of who you were. You affirmed that you were worthy of abundance, not because of what you had done, but because of who you were. You had a purpose, a vision, and the universe had provided you with the resources to fulfill that purpose. To reinforce these new beliefs, you turned to the practices that had served you so well in the past: meditation, visualization, and positive affirmations. Each morning, you spent time in meditation, focusing on the feelings of worthiness and abundance. You visualized yourself using your wealth in ways that brought joy, fulfillment, and positive change to the world. And throughout the day, you repeated affirmations that reminded you of your inherent worth and the limitless possibilities that lay before you. Over time, you began to notice a shift. The old fears and doubts started to lose their power, replaced by a sense of calm and confidence. You no longer felt the need to cling to your wealth out of fear of losing it. Instead, you embraced the idea that money was a flowing energy, one that could be directed toward creating more abundance in your life and the lives of others. As you continued this inner work, you found that your outer world began to reflect these changes. You became more comfortable with making decisions about your wealth, more willing to take risks and invest in projects that aligned with your values. You started to see your money not as a finite resource, but as a means of expanding your impact, of contributing to causes and communities that mattered to you. One of the most significant shifts occurred when you decided to invest in a local startup that was focused on sustainable energy solutions. The company was small but innovative, and its mission resonated deeply with your own values. Investing in this company felt like a way to put your money where your heart was, to support something that had the potential to make a real difference in the world. But as excited as you were about the investment, there was still a part of you that hesitated. What if the company failed? What if you lost the money you had invested? These thoughts triggered the old fears, the remnants of your scarcity mindset that hadn't yet fully dissolved. Instead of pushing these fears aside, you chose to face them. You reminded yourself that all investments carried risks, but that those risks were a necessary part of growth and progress. You affirmed that you were willing to take those risks because the potential rewards, both financial and in terms of impact, were worth it. You also reminded yourself that failure was not something to be feared, but a natural part of the learning process. Even if the investment didn't pan out, you would have gained valuable experience and knowledge. With this perspective, you moved forward with the investment, confident that you were making the right decision. And as you did, you felt a sense of liberation, a release from the grip of fear that had once held you back. You were no longer paralyzed by the idea of losing money or making mistakes. Instead, you were focused on the possibilities, on the potential for growth and positive change. This shift in mindset extended to other areas of your life as well. You became more willing to try new things, to step out of your comfort zone, and to embrace opportunities that once seemed too risky or uncertain. You started taking classes in subjects that interested you, exploring hobbies that you had always been curious about, and traveling to places you had never been. Each new experience added to your sense of abundance, reinforcing the belief that life was full of opportunities for growth, joy, and fulfillment. But perhaps the most profound change was in your relationships. As you let go of your limiting beliefs, you found that you were able to connect with others on a deeper level. You became more open, more authentic, and more willing to share your true self with the people in your life. This openness led to richer, more meaningful relationships, both personally and professionally. You also began to notice how your new mindset influenced the people around you. Friends and family members who had once been skeptical or dismissive of your ideas now started to seek your advice and guidance. Colleagues who had viewed you as reserved or cautious now saw you as a leader, someone who was willing to take bold action and inspire others to do the same. One day, as you were sitting with a close friend who had been going through a difficult time, you realized just how far you had come. Your friend was struggling with many of the same limiting beliefs that you had once held, beliefs about money, worthiness, and scarcity. As she shared her fears and concerns, you found yourself offering insights and advice that came from a place of deep understanding. You spoke to her about the power of perception, about how changing your mindset could change your reality. And as you did, you saw a light in her eyes, a glimmer of hope, a recognition that perhaps she too could overcome her fears and embrace a life of abundance. In that moment, you realized that your journey wasn't just about you. It was about the impact you could have on others, the way your own transformation could inspire and uplift those around you. You understood that by overcoming your own limiting beliefs, you were paving the way for others to do the same. And with that realization came a sense of purpose that was even stronger than before. You decided to take this purpose to the next level by sharing your journey more openly. You began to write about your experiences, about the challenges you had faced and the lessons you had learned along the way. You started a blog, sharing your insights with a wider audience, and you were amazed at the response. People from all walks of life reached out to you, expressing gratitude for your words and sharing their own stories of transformation. As you continued to share, you felt a deep sense of fulfillment. You were using your wealth not just in a financial sense, but in a spiritual sense, by spreading the message of abundance, by helping others overcome their own limiting beliefs, and by contributing to a world where everyone could live a life of purpose, joy, and fulfillment. The journey of overcoming your limiting beliefs was not easy, and there were still moments when doubt and fear would creep in. But you knew that these moments were part of the process, part of the ongoing journey of growth and self-discovery. And with each challenge you faced, you grew stronger, more resilient, and more committed to living a life that was aligned with your highest self. As you reflected on this journey, you felt a deep sense of gratitude for the million-dollar check that had sparked this transformation, for the challenges that had forced you to confront your deepest fears, and for the opportunities that had allowed you to grow and evolve into the person you were meant to be. You knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but you also knew that you were equipped to handle them. You had overcome your limiting beliefs, and in doing so, you had unlocked a world of possibilities. The future was bright, and you were ready to embrace it with an open heart and an abundant mindset. As you looked out at the world with fresh eyes, you knew that the greatest wealth was not in the money you had received, but in the knowledge and wisdom you had gained along the way. And with that understanding came a profound sense of peace, the peace that comes from knowing that you are living a life of purpose, guided by the power of perception and the limitless possibilities that lie ahead. Chapter 6. The Manifestation of Abundance. With the journey of overcoming your limiting beliefs behind you, the horizon ahead looked wide and full of possibilities. You had successfully shifted from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, and this new way of thinking had opened doors you hadn't even known existed. The $1 million, once a symbol of sudden change, had become a tool for conscious, purposeful living, a means to create not only personal wealth, but also to manifest a life rich in meaning, connection, and contribution. As the weeks passed, you began to experience what could only be described as a flow state, where life seemed to move in harmony with your intentions. Opportunities, resources, and connections appeared almost effortlessly, as if the universe was aligning itself with your vision. Each day, you found yourself more attuned to this flow, more confident in your ability to create and sustain abundance in every area of your life. The first major manifestation of this abundance was the realization of the community project you had envisioned. What had started as a vague idea during one of your meditations had now taken on a life of its own, fueled by your passion and the support of like-minded individuals. You had already gathered a small but dedicated group of collaborators, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to the table. The project, which you had tentatively named The Sanctuary, was centered on the idea of creating a sustainable, self-sufficient community that prioritized connection, well-being, and spiritual growth. The Sanctuary would be a place where people could come to learn, to heal, to create, and to connect with both nature and each other. It would be a living embodiment of the abundance mindset, a place where resources were shared, where creativity flourished, and where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. You began by securing a piece of land that perfectly matched the vision you had held in your mind, a beautiful expanse of fields, forests, and rivers, located just far enough from the city to provide a sense of retreat, yet close enough to remain accessible. The land acquisition was your first significant use of the $1 million, and it felt deeply satisfying to see such a tangible result of your wealth. But more than the financial aspect, what excited you most was the energy surrounding the project. The people involved were passionate and committed, each driven by a shared vision of creating something that would benefit not just themselves, but the wider community. Architects, environmentalists, educators and healers all came together with a common purpose, and the synergy between them was palpable. As plans for the sanctuary took shape, you found yourself stepping into a leadership role with ease and confidence. This was not the hesitant, unsure version of yourself that had once doubted your worthiness. This was someone who had embraced their potential, who trusted in their ability to bring a vision to life. And as you led meetings, made decisions, and coordinated efforts, you felt a deep sense of alignment with your true purpose. The process of building the sanctuary was not without its challenges. There were setbacks and obstacles, as there always are in any significant endeavor. There were moments of doubt, times when the sheer scope of the project felt overwhelming. But each time you encountered a roadblock, you reminded yourself of the lessons you had learned, the power of perception, the importance of maintaining an abundance mindset, and the value of trusting in the flow of life. One particularly challenging moment came when a key permit was delayed, threatening to stall the entire project. The frustration among the team was palpable, and for a brief moment you felt the old fears creeping back. The fear that things would fall apart, that you would fail. But instead of succumbing to these fears, you chose to approach the situation from a place of trust and resilience. You gathered the team and reminded them of the vision they were working toward, of the bigger picture beyond the temporary setback. Together, you brainstormed alternative solutions, reached out to contacts who could help expedite the process, and maintained a positive outlook. It wasn't easy, but your determination and faith in the project kept everyone motivated. In the end, the permit came through, and the project moved forward without significant delay. This experience reinforced your belief in the power of mindset, in the importance of maintaining a positive and abundant perspective, even in the face of challenges. It also deepened your connection with your team, solidifying the bonds that had formed through shared effort and mutual support. As construction on the sanctuary began, you found yourself reflecting on how far you had come. The $1 million check that had once seemed like an impossible windfall had now been transformed into something far greater, a catalyst for positive change, a means of manifesting a dream that was aligned with your deepest values. And as you watched the first foundations being laid, you felt a profound sense of fulfillment. But the sanctuary was only one aspect of the abundance you were manifesting. Your personal life had also undergone a significant transformation. The relationships you had cultivated were richer and more meaningful than ever before. You had reconnected with old friends, deepened bonds with family, and forged new connections with people who shared your values and vision. One of the most significant relationships in your life had evolved in a way that surprised and delighted you. A close friend, someone who had been by your side through much of your journey, had become an integral part of your life. What had started as a deep friendship had gradually blossomed into something more, a partnership rooted in mutual respect, shared goals, and a deep, abiding love. This relationship was unlike any you had experienced before. It was not based on need or dependency, but on a mutual desire to grow, to support each other's dreams, and to create a life of abundance together. You found that your partner not only supported your vision for the sanctuary, but also had dreams and goals that complemented your own. Together, you began to explore ways to integrate your individual passions into a shared life that was rich in purpose and joy. As you nurtured this relationship, you realized that it was another manifestation of the abundance mindset you had cultivated. By letting go of old fears and limiting beliefs, by embracing your worthiness and stepping into your power, you had attracted a partner who reflected these qualities back to you. Together, you were creating a life that was full of love, growth, and shared purpose. The abundance you were manifesting also extended to your health and well-being. With the stress and anxiety of your old life behind you, you found that you had more energy, more vitality, and a greater sense of overall well-being. You took up new activities, yoga, hiking, and meditation, that not only nurtured your body, but also your mind and spirit. Your mornings became sacred time, dedicated to practices that set the tone for the day ahead. You would rise early, meditate in the quiet stillness of dawn, and then spend time journaling, setting intentions, and visualizing the life you were creating. These practices kept you grounded and connected to the flow of abundance that was now a constant presence in your life. As the sanctuary neared completion, you began to turn your attention to the future. You had accomplished so much, but you knew that this was only the beginning. There were other projects, other dreams waiting to be realized. You began to think about how you could expand the impact of the sanctuary, how you could create a network of communities that embodied the same principles of sustainability, connection, and spiritual growth. You also started to explore ways to share your journey with a wider audience. The blog you had started had gained a following, and you began to receive invitations to speak at events, to share your story and the lessons you had learned along the way. At first, the idea of public speaking intimidated you, but you recognized it as another opportunity to grow, to step out of your comfort zone and embrace the abundance that life had to offer. Your first speaking engagement was at a small conference on sustainable living. As you stood in front of the audience, you felt a surge of nerves, but also a deep sense of purpose. You shared your story, the journey from scarcity to abundance, the challenges you had faced, and the vision you had for the sanctuary. As you spoke, you could feel the energy in the room shift, as if your words were resonating on a deeper level with those who were listening. Afterward, several people approached you, thanking you for your talk and sharing their own experiences. Some were inspired by your story to pursue their own dreams. Others were interested in getting involved with the sanctuary, and still others simply wanted to connect, to be part of the community you were building. It was a powerful reminder of the impact that one person's journey could have on others, and it deepened your commitment to continue sharing, to continue manifesting abundance in all its forms. As the months passed, the sanctuary opened its doors, and the community you had envisioned began to take shape. People came from all over to experience what you had created, a place of healing, learning, and connection. Workshops were held, gardens flourished, and a sense of peace and purpose permeated the air. It was everything you had dreamed of, and more. But the true magic of the sanctuary was not in the physical space, but in the connections that were formed, the lives that were touched, and the transformation that occurred. People came seeking healing, clarity, and purpose, and they left with a renewed sense of self, a deeper connection to others, and a belief in the abundance that life had to offer. You watched with pride and gratitude as the sanctuary grew, as it became a beacon of light in a world that often seemed filled with darkness. And as it did, you knew that your journey of manifesting abundance was far from over. There were still new dreams to be dreamed, new challenges to be faced, and new possibilities to be explored. In the end, the $1 million check had been a catalyst, but the true wealth you had gained was in the knowledge, the growth, and the connections that had come from embracing an abundance mindset. You had learned that abundance was not just about money, but about the richness of life itself, the love, the purpose, the joy, and the impact you could have on the world. As you looked out at the thriving community you had helped to create, you felt a deep sense of fulfillment. You knew that you were exactly where you were meant to be, living the life you were meant to live. And as you prepared to embark on the next chapter of your journey, you did so with an open heart, an abundant mindset, and a profound trust in the flow of life. The journey of manifesting abundance was ongoing, ever evolving, and you were ready for whatever came next. The future was bright, and you were excited to continue creating, growing, and living a life that was rich in every possible way.